Hello, once again, I'm BR Schultz, SP500. I want to give you an in-depth walkthrough of how I think the bottom of the markets could fall as late as August 6th or 7th. I'm trying to study my short-term models, and so I want to give you an update on that. So I thought the peak was around 1821st. Looks like we exceeded a little bit higher yesterday. And usually my rule of thumb is I try to keep it, or hope for, markets not to exceed my highest level within my window by greater than 1%, so about 70 points. We exceeded on SP500 USD yesterday, by about 30 to 40 points, so a little bit higher than my peak window. So it's hopefully going to hold near there. We've only got so many days left before we bottom, at least in the models view. And so again, the focal point is to keep viewers focused on the end of the decade as the macro peak in markets around Q4 of 2030, and then have a 3 to 4 year period of Great Depression window where interest rates, I think President Trump will get interest rates down into late 2030 versus the old school of thought of having interest rates bottom in a recession. I think we'll have kind of the inverse effect. I think, you're hearing President Trump ask for interest rates to get lowered into the end of the decade. So I think it'll be the opposite. Markets will go up because of interest rates bottoming versus, and historically we've had interest rates bottom at the bottom of a recession, right? At the end of a recession. So it's the inverse. And that's what creates the melt up into 2030. And this is the roaring 20s. If you remember, they did similar actions at the end of the 1920s. They lowered taxes, they lowered interest rates, things of that nature. Andrew Mellon did that. And what's also interesting is that President Trump had an AI summit yesterday at an Andrew Mellon facility, right? Or the arena or whatever was named after Andrew Mellon, which is, I find very interesting, because I think AI could lead to our Great Depression window, right? It's going to be what drives up markets more than likely into the end of the decade, and then it's kind of like the tech boom of the late 90s, and then we have the possibility of another Great Depression, like the early 2000s, right? So it's I would find it almost ironic that he would give his speech at none other than Andrew Mellon named arena, so to speak, because he's the one that led us into the last Great Depression, and they might as well just name the next arena Jerome Powell if the next Great Depression unfolds, because I think Jerome Powell did nothing to try to mitigate or stop the next Great Depression from happening. Obviously, he had almost 10 years to work on that, and he did nothing. He kept it the same, and so I think that's where we're going. But I want to give you an update of why I believe that on the short-term models we could see August 6th or 7th as the final bottom here. Thank you for joining me. And then this is the new technique that I'm using on my Einstein model for projecting peaks. And so again, the model projected a peak right around 18th, 21st, roughly, using the yellow line. I mean, could you push it out a little bit into the 23rd? Yeah, you could. So this is where the macro peak can only get so close, but it's surprising that this model can get as close as a micro model, right? A model that I've built that's small scale, still has a little bit of variance, right? But this sharp turning point Einstein model that I call it can get just as precise as my short-term models for peaks. So I find that quite interesting, right? So hard to say that a short-term model can get me that much closer than a macro model. The macro model seems to do pretty well, and that also picked out the July 3rd peak, if you will, if you remember that, and then picks out obviously the peak around February 20th when the markets began their crash into April. So I find this technique seems to be working pretty good, so hopefully we'll see the peak in the market stick here that we saw yesterday on July 23rd. And then remember, the focus of my modeling is to draw attention to where I believe the grand scale peak is going to be in around Q4 of 2030. Let's move on to the next model. So then this is the Einstein model that projects lows. You can see the back testing there. It even picked up the July 16th low. You can see that. And then it's projecting, this is where I was kind of around the August 1st, but the dates in Excel, if you've ever worked with Excel and dates, you can't show every date, right? If every date showed up, you'd overlap and you just see a big solid block of black down there for the dates because the color of the dates is black, and then so it doesn't show every date. So if you think it's pointing to exactly that date, it can be a tolerant variance of a couple days or 2-3 days, right? So it could be August 6th or 7th that we finally see the market's bottom from the grand scale as well. Now I'll look at the micro model next. And so originally my focus on the short-term model, this is a 5-minute model. The red line, what I call the Homer Simpson ultimate couch potato model. Tried to work on that over last month or so. You can see that the black line has 3 hit count, essentially going out to August 1st, and then there's a yellow line that if you angle it just a little bit slightly different, you get out to about August 6th or 7th. So the markets could, in theory, crash until August 6th or 7th. You could have a double bottom in effect, something like that, or you could have a full-on crash into the 6th or 7th. But that would satisfy the Einstein model, and then satisfy this red line as well. And then yes, I'd have smaller term models, but I find that the red line model works pretty well for picking the final bottom when it has 3 touch points, and it's mandatory that it has 3 touch points in order to create a crash. So you can argue that it has a very clear trajectory. It only crosses over the red line once. You can see that crossover is about a little left center of the graph. And then so it just has a clear pathway up to the top of the graph. It doesn't interfere with the red wave a lot. Pretty clear trajectory. So I would argue that you could have the final bottom around August 6th or 7th. So August 6th being the final date, plus or minus a day, let's say, as the final bottom, because it has a final 3 count. So usually the 3 counts can provide a pretty powerful swing down. So that's where I see the end of the volatility, so to speak. All right, I think that's it for today. Thank you so much. Again, this is just a snippet of the GoFundMe page. I didn't want you to forget that, so thank you. And please bookmark it, whatever, and watch it over the next decade or into late 2034. Thank you so much.